going on, people? Welcome to United View and welcome to the tactical view from the Carabao Cup final. We are trophy collectors. However, the manager has already said today, don't care about this, mate. Got Wednesday night, got another cup to go for. This is just the start. But we have to break it down. He said we're allowed 24 hours. That's what he did say. You're allowed 24 hours. So we're still within the 24-hour mark to still celebrate this win. But more importantly, though, business as usual, breaking it down and talking about it. So Cam, let's go.
Before we start, what feels so good about it is that it's the start of something. It doesn't feel like the trophy's an end point.
Yes.
It's the start of the journey. It's the first one. And look, if we're not in this competition, what are the things we say about it normally? It's not the greatest competition to win. So look, it is very much just the start. 1 down, 3 to go.
But I like, and just before you go into it actually, I like the fact that that mentality kicked in.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about how you felt, and you guys at home, I kind of went, when I was driving home, I was obviously happy, taking it all in, and I went, beating Barcelona felt a little bit more like that was so routine today.
Yeah.
But that's testament to actually our mentality is getting back to, yes, Man United should collect Carabao Cups in February, and that should be the springboard to get more. You celebrate it in the stadium, celebrate it online, it's like for a few hours afterwards, or the 24 hours that we're talking about. Wednesday night, I want all the smoke. I want to put West Ham to the sword. I want to go through to the next round of the FA Cup. So 100%, the manager thinks it, the player, Bruno's interview, hungry for more, I need more. They all want more. It gives you that little taste. And that's what we've got as fans. So long may it continue. Let's get into it.
Spot on. And as you mentioned Thursday night, we've got to remember we can't take sort of every game in isolation. These games do matter. They do, sort of the cumulative effect is important. And obviously you've just played a really intense game against Barcelona where there's a lot of transitions, a lot of duels, really energy sapping stuff. And 3 days later we've got a cup final. So I think that's important to bear in mind in terms of the way we played in that cup final. Obviously we weren't sort of high pressing, we weren't as intense as we possibly usually are. It was a lot more sort of sit back and let Newcastle have the ball, but we'll control the space, we'll control the game. So that's something worth bearing in mind. Now, I want to come on to the Newcastle team, look at what they've got, the sort of different things that they can offer. Obviously, Loris Karius in net. We all know his history, so I think it was always going to be important to get a lot of shots off, and you saw what happened with the second goal where he's basically just palmed it into his own net. But outside of that, what you can really see with this team is that you've got, for the most part, a lot of players who are really good ball carriers. They're not the sort of like a Barcelona team where they're going to tiki-taka, lots of short passing, sort of play you off the park. They've got a lot of really, really physical ball carriers. So they've got Joe Linton, you've got Longstaff, Bruno Guimaraes, to be fair, is a great ball progressor, and Alan St-Maximin's great in 1v1 duels. But I think that's so important to remember in terms of the way they play and how that feeds into our game plan, is that they've got a lot of players who like to carry the ball, like to dribble with it. And you can really see that here in some of the stats we've got here. So looking at the way Newcastle get their shots off, this is their ranks in the league. Obviously, you've got to remember sort of they're around the sort of 4th, 5th place mark in the Premier League. So you compare the stats here to that. In terms of live passes, so open play passes, you can see they're a little bit lower, so they don't really create as many chances or as many shots from open play passing. So maybe they're not really going to cross the ball in and use that to create their shots. They're not going to sort of pass their way through you. There's a lot from dead balls as well, so that was an important thing to be aware of. Yeah, very good in terms of
they're
creating
the new
shots.
Burnley of the league. It's like, and you see that from when they do long throws, and whenever they get a free kick that's kind of even like high up in their own half, they kind of whip it in, and we just keep a high line. But you know, Trippier's got great delivery. They're always looking to get the big men up and do that. So I didn't actually realise I was first.
Spot on, yeah. So that was again another thing that plays into our game in terms of we've got to be very good at defending the box because we know they're good at that. But also, this is a really interesting one to highlight: take-ons. So what that tells you, third most take-ons in the league that lead to shots. So what that tells you is in terms of the way that they're creating their chances, it tends to be obviously someone taking on someone. You saw that really early on in the game with the St-Maximin chance where he takes on Dalot, gets the shot at De Gea. But if you're thinking about how to defend against that, one way to do it is have a really high line. So if they do take someone on, then you've got a lot of time to recover, a lot of distance to recover, that sort of stuff. But another way of doing it when perhaps you've just played a really intense game against, let's say, Barcelona, is sit a little bit deeper, get a lot of players around the ball, be really compact as a team so that if someone does take one of our players on and gets beaten, you've got someone else close by to help out. So again, that plays into the way that we defended. That plays into, again, the role of Casemiro, the role of Fred being really mobile in that team, in the defence, helping out the fullbacks at times. And that, I think, you've got to consider this when you think about our game plan as well, and that's something that Ten Hag would have thought about before the game.
I think that's a really good link that you've made and a really appropriate graphic that you've used there. Well done to you. There's a reason why you've used it. But no, seriously, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were first for sort of dead ball situations. But looking at their game and seeing what they do, 100%. Obviously, there's a reason why the stats always back up. Is the proof. And to see that third, because it literally is. You look at Isak as well. He's another type of striker. When he came on, he was looking to come short a little bit because he's playing up two with Callum Wilson, get on a half turn, try and draw players in, I remember watching out of interest because I knew we'd probably be playing them. The first leg they had against Southampton of the Carabao Cup semi-final. And it was quite nip and tuck, quite tight. They brought Isak off the bench. He made a run down the channel, took someone on, cut it back, Joe Linton scored. And that literally just feeds into how I see them play. So I just thought I'd just make that point that's really interesting to see that's how they play, to be honest with you. Next up.
So bearing that in mind, we're going to look a little bit at sort of the dynamics that Newcastle use, how they try and build up as a team. So what you often see, and you bear in mind that Eddie Howe's created this game plan, this way of playing, because it suits the players he's got. It's not just a sort of general philosophy he's always had. It's something that he's got that suits the players he's got on the pitch. So obviously we know Alan St-Maximin is really, really good 1v1, so you want to isolate him as much as possible. So what you typically see then is you see Newcastle building up in a bit more of a back three. So you get Trippier pushing on, which again suits his sort of style of football. He's good on the ball, gives him a little bit more space. He can put some good balls in from that side
that quite a lot. Couple runs in there from long stuff while Almiron clipped them down the side.
Exactly, and then with Trippier providing the width there, what you tend to see is Almiron dropping in here in sort of the half spaces, getting involved a little bit more in central areas, and he's good in those pockets as well. So that suits him. And then what you've got at the sort of the back, you've got this sort of three that tucks across like that. So what this does here is that it isolates St-Maximin 1v1, because if Dan Burn's here, we'll come on to in a second, it shifts the United players inwards. Then you've got Joe Linton who can pop up in these sorts of areas here. In terms of them progressing the ball forward, often it's Bruno Guimaraes there, responsible for quite a lot of it, and sometimes when he's struggling to do it all by himself, then you get Longstaff dropping in as well. So that's sort of the dynamics that Newcastle typically see. Obviously you've got the Dan Burn St-Maximin thing going on here, and you've got Trippier wider with Almiron tucking in on that side. So if we now sort of compare that to sort of match the teams up and we see how that works for United, in terms of the pictures that typically play out when Newcastle are building from deep, what we see, as we've just said, Trippier will push on a little bit higher. You've got this back three that comes across here. And what you've got on this left side, as we said, for Newcastle, you've got St-Maximin isolated 1v1 with Dalot. And what you see here is that Anthony's given a decision to make. So what we typically see, obviously, with Dan Burn tucking in a little bit, is that Anthony can either sort of stand here and block the passing lane, but then what we see is Joe Linton can sort of free himself in the half spaces here for a really easy ball where he can come and pick that up in between the lines. So what you've got to do instead is Anthony's got to stay narrow there, and what that means then is that ball to St-Maximin is on. So that's the sort of dynamic that Eddie Howe's really going for. Get the ball to St-Maximin as much as he possibly can. And to be fair to him, apart from that one foul, Dalot did pretty well whilst he was on.
That's what I mean. He got booked after 8 minutes. That usually signifies that it's going to be a long afternoon for you. And then the one where he actually got skinned, to be fair, for the De Gea shot. It weren't until I watched it back. I thought, bloody hell. It was lightning quick feet though. Sometimes you just...
Yeah, you got to hold your hands up.
Say, I got done.
St-Maximin is one of the best in the world.
Yeah, but then you also saw the worst of St-Maximin after that, where you just do not know what you're going to get, and he's basically another Traore.
Yeah, and to be fair, when Wan-Bissaka came on, he just gave up. He threw in the towel because Wan-Bissaka, he just locked him up.
Yeah.
Now, Wan-Bissaka made an incredible amount of tackles, and that is one of the best defensive displays I've seen for a long, long time.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Yeah, so then, in terms of the rest of the organisation, when Newcastle are building out from the back, as we normally see with United, what we try to do is we create a lot of 1v1 duels, a lot of transitional situations where if we force Newcastle to play in the right areas, because we're 1v1, man for man in a lot of situations, if the United players win those duels, we've got a high chance of creating a transition-like situation because the Newcastle players are all really spread out because they're trying to play out from the back, and it means that we can go forward, having won the duels, sort of get the ball moving forwards, not just win the ball from the tackle, but like go through the player, knock the ball into your path, like we saw with Sabitzer when he came on, and we've got a good chance to get forward and score straight away from it. So with that in mind, what we sort of saw in midfield was if Bruno Guimaraes there and Longstaff are sort of dropping in to sort of pick up the ball and play from the back, we see Bruno Fernandes on top of Bruno Guimaraes, and we've got Fred there right on Longstaff. So what we see with the pressing then from this sort of point is we see something we've seen quite a lot all season really, is Rashford, rather than sort of staying wide and pressing Trippier, what we see is once the ball comes in here somewhere, Weghorst will go in there. And then before that ball can get out to Cher, Rashford is in that line of that pass to block the ball to Trippier, so it can't really go to Trippier, and then he'll go and press Cher instead. So he'll curve his run around like that. And the idea behind that is that you then you cut off the option wide.
Blocking the passing lane, aren't you? Yeah.
Exactly. You cut off the option wide, you force Newcastle central, And this area here, you can see pretty much everywhere there's a Newcastle player, there will be a Manchester United player on top. So what you see is if Cher then is on the ball, if he gives it to Almiron, you see Luke Shaw is following him everywhere he goes. So even if Almiron's coming around here, even onto the opposite side at times, Shaw gets dragged all the way across. If Wilson drops in, you've got Martinez following him. If Joe Linton's here, you've got Casemiro on top of him.
And it leaves Varane spare to kind of mop up any little loose bits as well, which
exactly
he did.
Yeah, that's what he does. That's what the guy does.
Yeah.
So the idea from the pressing strategy here, and yes, sometimes it will mean that they can go back to Karius, and with a good keeper who's got a good distribution, they can get that ball out over there, and then you do have to recover.
Yeah.
But what this does, and this is what Ten Hag has done so well, because Manchester United right now are not a fully an Eric Ten Hag team yet. We're not quite doing everything he'd want us to do. But what he's done is he knows we're a brilliant team in transition, so he creates as many of those transitional situations as possible in every single game. So you look at this area here. The idea is we force teams into the centre. Now, you might think, why would you want to force teams into the centre? Because, I mean, that's the best area of the football pitch, because you can sort of pass, you can shoot, you can dribble in any direction from the centre. You're not sort of, if you're out here, obviously you can only really go one way. Whereas, so the centre is an important area to sort of defend. But actually, when you're up the other end of the pitch in the final third...
It's an important place to win it back.
Exactly, that's it. So it's balancing the risk versus reward. If you're in your own third, yes, you want to protect the centre, force the opposition around the outside, and we'll come on to how United did that later. But if you're high up the pitch, actually, if you can force teams into the centre and you're good at winning it back there, what it does with Rashford curving his run like that to get in here, it means if we win that ball back, Rashford in this sort of position, if he gets in behind the centre-back there, he has got a really good chance to score a goal. It's not just a case of winning the ball back and something might happen. It's specifically designed, this game plan, to create as many possible situations where, if we win the ball back here, Rashford and Weghorst are both in really good positions to go and score, go and get a shot off within 1 or 2 passes, within sort of 5-10 seconds of winning the ball back. So that's the idea that Ten Hag's gone for. And to be fair, Newcastle didn't really fall into the trap too often. They didn't really lose the ball in those areas so much, but it was nice to see again that sort of that plan is holding.
The game plan was there,
and against other teams, against Barcelona, we won that ball, especially in the first leg.
Yeah.
Fred won that ball back in those sorts of areas so many times because it works. Yes, there's a little bit of risk involved, but the reward is potentially massive, and that's what it's all about.
I think the proof is in the pudding as well. I know we're going to talk more about some examples of that, but you look at the type of chances we did create. They did literally come from what you're saying, from central areas winning it back. I think of when Wan-Bissaka came on, and I know it was St. Maximum's decision to run into the centre and try and get past Wan-Bissaka, basically to take him on the inside. Yeah. But by him choosing to go there, or us forcing him to go there, however you want to call it, we win it back there. That starts the counter-attack. Then I can't remember if it hit someone's arm or hand or the move broke down, but there was an opportunity. The Sabitzer one, they find himself in a central area. He goes clattering into someone in the middle. Wicked tackle, great challenge. Then we're 3-on-3 or 3-on-2, whatever it was, and we couldn't quite get the finish. But again, the chance came from us in central areas, putting in tackles, which actually turned straight into a transition. Because it's one thing to build up in that area and work your way through it, but actually, like you said, and you said it in your fan view perfectly, actually, when I was listening back to it, and even when you said it at the time, when you said about Sabitzer, like, he has worked on that. That is not by accident. No. That is him under Nagelsmann at Leipzig, putting in together, you know, how to counter press, what it looks like in transitions. You're up straight away from your tackle, you play. Exactly. It's not to win the ball back and calm it down. And you see the way he tackled as well in that moment. Brilliant.
He's tackled to go forward and move the ball forward through the duel. Yeah. And you see, we've got Casemiro as well. Every time he wins the ball back, he plays a forward pass straight away. It's really vertical stuff, and that is what we're so good at. That is a massive strength of this United team. So we can create this sort of kill zone there, where there's so many 1v1 matchups, and we're good in those situations. We can win the ball back, go forward, and create chances. That's the idea. So what I want to talk about now is, so that's sort of defending when Newcastle are playing out from the back, high up the pitch. I want to talk about sort of what happens a little bit deeper. So if Newcastle do get out, knowing that we're man for man here with sort of Casemiro following Joe Linton, what's really important and where Casemiro really comes into his own is that if Newcastle did manage to get out, there's always going to be a transition point, a point at which, yes, there's a man for man assignment here, but it's not as simple as saying, in theory, it's a nice idea saying you stay man for man, you follow your man everywhere he goes for 90 minutes.
Like what Fred done to De Jong, just do that.
Yeah. in the reality, it's not that simple because at times Almiron might go away and Trippier's over here, so Shaw's got to deal with Trippier. So you've got an extra player in here, so someone's got to go and deal with him. And that is what the elite defensive midfielders can do. It's that decision making, it's knowing when it is that you've got to leave your man and go and deal with something on this side. It's knowing where the biggest danger is. And what you saw quite often as well was that maybe if Anthony's caught a little bit higher, I mean, he did get back in and help with St Maximin, but Casemiro was also equally capable of getting out and helping Dalot. And you see a lot of times, look, especially when Wan-Bissaka was going on, St Maximin can't go down the line because Wan-Bissaka will eat him up. Comes back inside, Casemiro's in there, he'll win the duel. So for me, that is what Casemiro is so brilliant at. It's, yes, knowing that obviously his responsibility is Joe Linton because these two are man for man, and you can't just sort of go over here because then Joe Linton's just going to pick up the ball in the half spaces, as we've mentioned, because you've got St Maximin here. Anthony sort of, if he goes and presses there, you've got that option into Joe Linton. So Casemiro needs to be aware of him, but it's that mentality, that decision making, that ability to know when it is the right time to make the switch, deal with something else, help out your fullback as much as needed. That is what an elite midfielder does.
And another thing I want to highlight about him as well, if you just bring in Isak for me. Because I thought we did this really, really well.
Just use Joe Linton as Isak.
Right, so let's use Joe Linton as Isak, right? In the second half, they did this, didn't they? Right? So they had two up there.
Yes.
We'll do that, and Longstaff was gone.
So it's more of a 4-4-2.
So it was like they played like a 4-4-2, didn't they? Where's the other one?
Joe Linton's back in.
Joe Linton back in there, right? So they did that second half, but obviously we need a player. Let's just put Jacob Murphy there.
Fine, yeah.
But that's Isak, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I love about us, and this is what I wanted to do, is wax lyrical about these two, right? We speak about this is off the cuff, by the way. This is not rehearsed. This is my tactical analysis, yeah. But on a serious note, you look at when we had Maguire and Lindelof, right? Then obviously you had the protection or lack of in front of them with McTominay and Fred. How many times did we say a lot of what happened with Maguire and Lindelof was in one-on-one situations, they're in big, big trouble. Yeah. You know, that they need screening, which, you know, most centre-backs need screening, but also the elite centre-backs, the top centre-backs go, I can take a man one-on-one. It's not a problem. Ideally, yes, usually what happens is there's a three and the two can marshal. But what happens when you have to engage in one-on-one duels? And because we've got two quick centre-backs, two little and large, like a little and large, or a calm and a crazy, or we've got the perfect marination of centre-backs, it's fine. And then on top of that, the ring awareness from this guy, so you talk about the other stuff he was doing. In the second half, I literally saw him go, right, no problem. I'm just going to be here. Where's the ball?
There.
So it doesn't matter if Callum Wilson's getting it over here. I can come across and double up. Varane's going to be fine. The same if the ball finds its way to Isak and he was kind of dropping off into here. Varane might follow him, or he might go, you know what, Cass, you've got him. Send him over to me once he comes in here. We'll deal with it. And just him just doing that different kind of role. You know, whether it's going forward, he's already scored his goal in the first half, getting forward, doing what he needs to do. He's already told David De Gea, nothing short, go long. He's just unbelievable. Like you said, just going into your point there of knowing when to go and help or just do that, just screen, just block. And that, I thought in the second half, along with Wan-Bissaka bringing on, but I thought that tactically from Ten Hag / Casemiro to know to do that was brilliant.
Yeah, so you've just alluded to it here. This will be Alex Isak for now.
Yeah.
The changes that Eddie Howe made at half time, he went more aggressive. He put two strikes. Yeah, you 2-0 down, you have to do it. He's put a second striker on. But Isak played sort of almost more as number 10 at times. He was dropping into these areas. Exactly. And Casemiro was sort of alive to those situations, swept up, didn't really have any problems with doing that. Anything. But what we'd done so well in the first half is that we'd stopped Newcastle progressing the ball into their forward players. Wilson hardly got a kick.
Nothing.
He wasn't really in the game at all. We forced them to go, sort of when they got a little bit higher up the pitch, we forced them to go around the outside, try to sort of...
Yeah, he was out here loads, wasn't he? Like trying to get little runs in and that. And then Martinez was just coming across, or whoever it was.
Exactly. So what the sort of picture you saw a lot in the first half was that actually United were quite deep. We were forcing them round the outside. It was more of a 4-1-4-1 situation that we had going on. And Newcastle weren't really able to get the ball into their forward players. The deep block, which is maybe sort of not the most positive term in football if you describe a big team as playing a deep block. It's never thought of brilliantly. Yeah. But it actually worked really well in terms of, we saw the stats at the start. Newcastle, if you get the ball, in terms of how they create their shots, they want to take people on. They don't really want to be getting too many crosses in from wide areas. They're not going to pass the way through you. So actually, if you sit deep, there's a lot of space in behind in transition, particularly with Trippier stepping up. So that's a chance for Rashford. Yep. And we saw sort of Bruno getting some good chances on transition as well.
Yeah, just couldn't find the pass, could he?
Exactly. But in this sort of situation with this organisation, you know, wherever the ball goes, and even if there's 2 balls on the pitch, Casemiro's sweeping it up. But you see, wherever it goes, Casemiro's able to help out down either side. You see that we're able to force the opposition around us rather than playing through the centre. So you see that's the opposite, really, of what we did high up the pitch, because back in your own sort of third, you don't want to be forcing opposition through the middle. So I think it was a really interesting sort of contrast between the 2 different styles of play, pressing high at the pitch and blocking deep. And then we talk about sort of the second half then, where Newcastle go into more of a 4-4-2. They've realised they were actually in the first half okay at playing through the thirds, but then once they got the ball into midfield, they couldn't get it into the final line. So second half, Eddie Howe takes off a midfielder, and he realises, hang on, we're going to have to go more direct, play up to those big strikers. And look, with these guys in the back, United dealt with it really well. It's brilliant playing individually.
It's brilliant.
There's never really a moment where you thought there was going to be a problem. No. I think the only one I was really concerned about was 8 minutes in when St Maximin had that chance on the
Yeah, I was worried at that point, and that I think is testament to Dalot as well, to calm down and see that half out, because that could have been a really difficult half. Like I said, especially because then he goes and gets done, and De Gea makes a good save with his left hand. But after that moment, I think there was one where he's matched him for speed on a yellow card and comes sliding in, puts it out for a throw. That just makes, St Maximin know, actually, ain't going to be as easy as I thought. And then, the kind of tactical astuteness, and really, I say tactical astuteness, it's an easy decision for Ten Hag to make.
Oh, yeah.
We wax lyrical about Eric Ten Hag all the time, but for someone as good as him, that's such a basic, easy decision to go. 100%. Dalot's on a yellow card, we're 2-0 up in a cup final, and Newcastle are going to go for it. So why on earth would I not bring on Wan-Bissaka? So it just made sense, but he just done it at the right time. And then when our legs got a little bit tired as well, and Newcastle were, we were defending well, but you need that extra little push, that extra little raise the tempo, raise the level. Sabitzer and McTominay on at that time was absolutely perfect. It really was.
It was indeed, yeah. The last thing I want to talk about today, the last big thing I want to bring up is United's game plan in possession. So we've talked a lot about how we stopped Newcastle, which realistically, given the fact they had 61% possession, I think that's fair enough to spend most of the time talking about how we stopped them.
Yep.
We're now going to talk about our game plan in possession and what sort of happened differently. So probably the most noticeable thing, and I've seen a lot of people commenting on it online, was this man here, Luke Shaw. So you see, sometimes he's really wide, sometimes he's narrow, and we're going to talk now about when he does each of those things and why he does each of those things. So what you see in terms of the press, if and when Newcastle are pressing pretty high, is Luke Shaw's positioning depends entirely on Miguel Almiron.
Yeah.
So what you see is if Almiron's in a position where he's ready to jump on Shaw as soon as he receives the ball, then there's no real point in Shaw being out wide. So what he does then is he realises, actually, I'll tuck inside, drag Almiron in, and then he'll create this sort of double pivot here. So you've got Shaw and Casemiro able to receive the ball between the lines. Dalot will stay deep, so that you've got sort of a 3 there against Wilson and St Maximin. So you've got enough sort of players there to retain the ball, either side to side, and then find the ball forwards eventually. But the role of Luke Shaw here is really important, because him doing that allows this space to open up here for Marcus Rashford to drop into.
Like what they wanted to do with St Maximin.
Exactly, it's a very similar thing. You've got a winger who's very good 1v1. You want to open up this space here, because Shaw's come in away from here. You've taken the Newcastle player out of that area. So he's no longer blocking that passing line, and if he just decides to stay out there, well, great, Luke Shaw can receive in here. So he comes in here with him. Rashford then is receiving the ball. If he times his movement right, and that's one of the most important things, because if you go too early in this position, Trippier follows you in. You've got Trippier right behind you. You're not going to get.
And if you lose the ball in that situation with big gaps in behind you as well.
Big gaps in behind you, and also Trippier's going forward. Exactly. So chances are that ball's going forward. It's going to be a problem. So that's when you sort of layer on top of the tactical idea of inverting the fullback to isolate the winger. You've got to layer on the technical aspect of timing your movement brilliantly, making sure that's right, so Rashford can receive the ball, playing forwards, and ready to sort of cut in and get in at pace. The other thing as well that I quite liked was that when we went direct at times as well, we knew that Rashford is much better in the air. He's a much bigger sort of player, much bigger physical presence than Kieran Trippier. So at times as well, it wasn't a case of just playing that on the ground to Rashford, hoping he can get the ball under control and sort of spin in behind. We also did look for him in the air a little bit as well, and then look for knockdowns towards Fred, for sort of the players in the midfield area, Bruno Fernandes coming across as well, and that worked quite nicely. And the final thing here to highlight is the importance of this man here in this particular shape. If you've got a right-footed centre-back, I don't want to sort of criticise him for everything, but obviously the player who's played here in recent seasons, Harry Maguire, right-footed, takes a lot longer on the ball, not quite as good as Martinez. Now, although Luke Shaw's tucked in and there is space here, it does mean this midfield is a lot more congested because you've got an extra player from United, you've also got an extra player from Newcastle in that area. So if you're looking to pick a pass into midfield, that means it's a lot more difficult because there's a lot more players in there. So you need a player who's got fantastic ability, but also that left-footed passing angle is so important in terms of finding those passes, but also being able to play away from the pressure.
He does it loads as well, and he does it with pace. Like the pass is crisp and fast. Boom, into it, off you go, boom, into it.
So you know, and the thing is, it's just the angle, the curl on the pass, knowing that even if Almiron goes there, it's curving away from him rather than a right footer, it's curving sort of towards him. It just gives you that little bit more time. Now, obviously, left-footed centre-backs are basically one of the most important things in football. You can see that with Tyrone Mings getting in the England squad. So,
but I have noticed as well with Varane, what he's really good at is using his left foot to come back across the line.
Yes.
Because again, a right footer, take a little time, you might want to come this angle bit so you can move it with your right foot. He can receive the ball from Dalot, and I know this looks easy, but not all centre-backs do this. They pass with their preferred foot, especially because you can't make no mistakes in here.
Yeah.
But it's never a problem for Varane to pass it on this side of his body with his left foot quickly to Martinez. And that's something that Lindelof doesn't really do as much. Probably more capable than Maguire, to be. Not probably, he is.
Yeah.
Maguire definitely isn't playing left-footed passes quite quick and with a bit of zap, even if it's back to David De Gea quickly or across there to Martinez. He isn't doing that. So, and Erik ten Hag, again, this isn't to bash Harry Maguire or to put any players down. This is just tactically what we're seeing and why we're better for it. That's what Erik ten Hag's seeing. So, that base, that box of four, Lindelof, Maguire, McTominay, Fred, we said for ages that it's just not working. We've just literally got a complete new four.
Yeah.
And it's completely changed our game.
And look, people say with Varane, he's not the best progressive passer, he's not going to break down a deep block by himself. No, he won't, that's correct. But what he does do is he circulates the ball quickly. He knows he may not be able to pass the ball forward, fine, doesn't matter. He'll just move it on quickly to somebody else who can do it. Yeah. And the other thing we see with Varane quite a bit is that we see a lot of times when he breaks forwards with the ball, he runs almost beyond the first line of the press. And then that allows Dalot to tuck in, who's possibly a bit more talented in those areas. You've got Martinez in there. And what that does again, is all these rotations, so you see Luke Shaw tucking in, the objective of that is to disconnect Almiron from the press. Yeah. It's the same thing here that you get with Varane tucking in there. The idea is you force someone to come and follow you to give a bit more space to these guys here. So it's those little things, little rotations. It may look like Varane's only gone 5-10 yards forward, but actually it's really important in terms of disorganising the press, giving the Newcastle players or the opposition players something different to think about, and that is so important in terms of just giving you that little bit of space to find a ball forwards and break lines.
And you know what? As we wrap up, the last thing I wanted to say was absolutely spot on, as per usual, tactically. But you know what? Can't underestimate what the players showed up here. Yeah. Just the desire to win their duels, the desire to manage the emotion, to manage the game properly. Tactics are one thing. Erik ten Hag always talks about it. You have to be tactically astute. The way we're set up and what we do, the principles, the rules. Those are his buzzwords, aren't it?
Exactly.
And we follow them to the law, and that's why we got it. But if you don't match that with mentality and heart, you're not going to get anything. And I think actually above everything, that's what they showed yesterday. And that's why we got our first trophy in the bag. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Join the members club if you would like to as well. Roll on another cup game. Roll on West Ham on Wednesday. I think there's going to be some changes, but I tell you what, I don't think they'll be wholesale. No. I'm looking at sort of like a Martinez-Lindelof partnership, or he might play Maguire again, get his confidence up. A Martinez-Maguire. I don't think he just goes Maguire-Lindelof. No. Malacia probably come in. One of the right-backs, don't matter who, they're swapping anyway. Sabitzer can come in, lovely.
The only one I want to see rested is Marcus Rashford. He looked a little bit tired. Don't even put him in the squad. Just give him a night off. Let him do his thing.
Between Garnacho, Anthony and Sancho.
We've got it covered.
We've got that covered. Fred can take a rest. If you want to play McTominay. Yeah. Casemiro will probably play again. Yeah. Because he likes to keep a couple constants. But there you go. Anyway, we are out of here, guys. That is a tactical view done with one trophy in the bag. 3 more to go. Peace.